so what happens if two people are obliged, one person is obliged to other person, then the second person starts avoiding the other person. Avoidance. Using this the arrow in the sense that the person goes away from there. They go away from there because, okay, I don't want to be this person. It's constantly this person reminds me, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. Whereas gratitude, if it is there between two people, then the person feels inspired. Oh, this is a nice person. This person helped me. What can I do to respond to this favor? So in general, when we do something good for someone, most of us, we may expect that person should be at least courteous with me, maybe help me in my time of need. But that's just a normal human reciprocation. If we have to constantly remind that person, I did this for you, now you should do this for me, then neither the giver nor the receiver, it's very palatable. So now this is at least the first level. So when there is something good done and the other person doesn't reciprocate, then at one level there could be a sense of obligation which creates a strain in the relationship. But even worse is the other person does not return the favor, but the other person just pretends as if the favor was never done. At least in the first case, the person is feeling obliged, and that's why they're trying to avoid. Okay, so that's the first level. Second level is if you do some favor to someone and that person doesn't even remember that we did some favor. It's like we lend them some money and then this is, when are you going to return this money? Say, when did I borrow money from? It's infuriating. It's so the first level is avoidance. The second is forgetfulness. That is even more infuriating. But the worst is where we do something good for someone, the other person doesn't repay the good, the other person even express acknowledgement that I have done something, we have done something good for them. The third is the other person actually hurts us. We do a favor to them and that person does a disfavor to us. We help someone and that person harms us. And this is where betrayal comes from. We trust someone and they betray our trust. So in army, there are two, one of my friends is in the Indian army. There are two kinds of wrongdoings which are considered very serious. One is being a deserter and the other is being a traitor. So now deserter itself is bad. That if you're in the army, you're supposed to fight and you see the enemy and you say, hey, it's too dangerous, I can't fight. They run away from there. Well, if you're a part of a team, the team is counting on you. You have to be there. So deserting is bad enough. But you're fighting on the battlefield and suddenly the person next to you, instead of shooting the other person, turns the gun and shoots at you. That's being a traitor. That's even worse. So in our relationships, when we function with each other, in general, for a person to function, trust is very important. A person cannot trust anyone else. Then they just cannot get along in life. Now, of course, we could say there are two extremes. Somebody can trust too easily or trust too much, trust too fast. And if we start trusting everyone, we will be naive. And if we are naive, people will take us for a ride. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if we trust too little, if we don't trust anyone, the only result of this, we will be lonely. We don't open our hearts to anyone. We don't let anyone inside. And then a person who cannot trust, not only will they be personal lonely, they can't do much in life. Because how much can we do alone? We need to link with people. We need to work in a team. The world is a big place. We have to do something. We have to work with others. So both of these can be problems. Now, the balance stages, trust with intelligence. So don't be naive, but don't be too trusting. Don't be too suspicious also. So now, in this case, Lord Ram and Sugriv had met for the first time. If you consider, Sugriva had heard about Ram, the Dashrath, The King Dashrath was a famous king, and the Ayodhya dynasty, the dynasty of Raghus, was a well-known dynasty. But they had not met. And Sugriv had been struggling barely to survive from the many assassins that Wali had sent. And Lord Ram helped him not only save his life, but reclaim. He reunited with his family. He got the kingdom. And Lord Ram also helped him eventually to patch up with Wali. He talked with Wali, he talked with Sugriv and helped them. There was a deathbed reconciliation between the two of them. And in that sense, Lord Ram had done a huge favor for him. And now there was something to be expected. So in general, if someone is betrayed, so I'm elaborating on this whole point. Why does the Ramayana say that ingratitude that leads to betrayal is the worst of sins? That's what we are discussing over here. One is, as I said, trust is the foundation of relationship, of functioning in life, not just relationships, but is functioning in life. To be emotionally healthy, to be socially effective, we need to be able to trust others. So it may take more time for some people to trust, some people may take less time, that's natural. But everyone needs to be able to come to that level where they can trust. So we could put this another way, that if we are functioning in life, doubt is like a brake and trust is like the accelerator. If we consider life to be like a drive. Now what is going to happen is, that imagine if you are driving a car and you're only pressing the brake, the car will get nowhere, isn't it? So if a person is constantly doubting, that person will not get anywhere. Leave alone spiritually, even materially, the person cannot get anywhere. On the other hand, imagine a car which only has the accelerator and no brake. Keep pressing the accelerator. It will be dangerous. So we need, first, we could put it in other ways, that just as a car needs both the accelerator and the brake. Similarly, trusting and doubting, both are resources. And we need to know which resource to use when. So it's like a healthy balance of trust and doubt. So how does one determine it's healthy? How do we, say while driving, for example, how do we know whether we are balancing the brakes and the brakes and the accelerator properly? It is essentially by whether our car is moving forward, whether we are moving smoothly, whether moving safely ahead. If not, then there's something wrong. If our car is too jerky, if our car is too slow, if we're constantly veering off the road, constantly hitting the pavement, something wrong. So basically, we know the healthy balance is through it's smooth and safe. Similarly, some people, they're constantly doubting others. Where were you at this time? What were you doing? What did you do with this? What did you do with that? And say, if people don't feel that they are trusted, then they also become resentful. But on the other hand, if somebody is somewhere doing some, we see some red signals, and then we don't talk about it, then that person may just go off, do something which may hurt them, hurt us. So that finding that balance is not easy. And especially if someone is betrayed. So there can be multiple levels of negative reactions to betrayal. Betrayal can be in close relationships, betrayal can be in business, betrayal can be in various places. Versus that it is the one level which will naturally happen is we will feel bad that how did I misunderstand? How did I not see the signals that something was wrong with this person? You can see the first level is, how was I so blind about this person? Couldn't I have seen something? Was there something to see which I missed out? That feeling is actually there, and that's not a bad thing. But then it's one thing to be concerned about the fact that we trusted that. It's another thing is, okay, we say that this person is not trustworthy. So basically, we realize this is focused on this person. Is that particular person is not trustworthy. But what is worse is, from there, if we go further and say, no one is trustworthy. That is even worse. So what are we doing? We're taking one experience and we are generalizing from that experience. And what would be even worse? To say no one is trustworthy is, we might think that is the worst thing. What else is there? But even worse is thinking that I am not trustworthy in determining who is trustworthy. Means we lose trust in ourselves. And then that is, I am not trustworthy. Now, having some doubts is fine. Maybe we need to be a little more careful, a little more cautious. But to think that I can never read people at all, then that is a severe loss in our own capacity to judge ourselves. And that is extremely damaging. For doing anything in life, a basic level of trust in ourselves is required. Of course, we all need to know our limitations. Trusting ourselves doesn't mean not acknowledging our limitations. Say, if we have to take some medicine, if we are sick and we want to go to a doctor, we can't trust ourselves and think that, okay, I'll search on Google and find out what is the medicine for it and take the medicine. Maybe for some small things it's okay, but we need to go to the expert. So sometimes we have to know our limitations. But at least if I'm going to a doctor, if I start thinking that, how will I know which doctor is good, which doctor is bad? I can't know that. I can ask some friends. How can I know that the friends are trustworthy? If a doctor speaks, the doctor is a smooth talker, how can I know the doctor is trustworthy? Okay. Then what will happen is, just a small sickness can end up killing a person if that person doesn't trust anyone. Right? Generally, with respect to physical health, we will not do like this. But often with respect to our emotional health or social health, too much doubt, either doubting others or doubting ourselves, that can be very damaging. And essentially, betrayal can send a person down this track. And that is why, in terms of relationships, if somebody has done something good to us, is completely neglecting that, neglecting that, forgetting to reciprocate, forgetting to even acknowledge, that is considered such a serious thing. Because what happens is, our betrayal is, if we betray someone, betraying is a very strong word, and hopefully we will never betray anyone like that. But if we betray someone, it is not just that we may harm that person by that betrayal, by that specific incident, but we may harm that person far more, where they lose their capacity to trust anyone, or they lose their capacity to trust themselves. So now, in this case, when Sugriva is chastised by Lord Ram, by Lakshman rather, he says, ingratitude is the worst of sins. In Sanskrit, there are two words, krutagya and krutagna. That krutagna is a person who is not at all aware of what good has been done to them. Sugriva immediately comes back to his senses. And he reforms himself. So I talked about the three things. There is intentional, then there is accidental, and there is conditional. Now, let's explore these two. Accidental or circumstantial means that it's largely dependent on circumstances. In those circumstances, that person, okay, just happened. But now conditional means that we all have certain conditionings. And those conditionings, they tend to surface periodically. Now, when they surface, at that time, at one level, we can say, can we blame our conditionings for our actions? Well, it's not a question of blaming over here. If somebody says that, okay, why did you yell at that person? I'm a short-tempered person. That's why I got angry and yelled at that person. Okay. So sometimes some people use their conditionings to justify any and every action. But saying that I did this because of my conditionings, if that is all that we are saying, then that is like saying that a plane crashed because of gravity. Now, planes crash, but when they crash, it is not just because of gravity. These planes are designed to function in spite of gravity. So let's try to understand this key point over here. Let's look at Sugriva's context to understand this. Sugriva, it's interesting what Tara speaks to pacify Lakshman. And he says that even great sages succumb to temptation. And Sugriv is just a monkey. He couldn't resist the lure of creature pleasures. And he just succumbed. Please forgive him. But now he's come back to his senses. So if we consider Sugriv, what was the situation? He had been living in royalty. He grew up as the prince, not the heir, but still the prince in the royal family of the Vanaras. And then he was always with Vali and he lived in royal opulence. And then suddenly there was some misunderstanding. And from being the commander and the second in charge of the kingdom, suddenly he was in exile and he was fleeing for his life. And at least for Lord Ram, if you consider Sugriva's life, although he was in the forest, but you could say he was in a forest kingdom. The Kishkind was itself a kingdom. But from there, he suddenly had to be fleeing. And for him, it was exile. Now, for him, when the exile was there, for Lord Ram, at least he knew after 14 years, I'll come back. But Sugriv, there was no knowledge whether he would ever be able to come. And when Sugriv was out there, his situation in some ways was worse than Lord Ram's in multiple ways. First was, as I said, Sugriv's situation, it was, I'm saying here, I'm using greater than sign for worse actually. Then Ram's situation. Can you think of any reasons for this? First is the uncertainty of how long he's going to be there. It's like somebody's put in a jail. They told you're going to be in jail for 5 years. 5 years may be big time, but at least after 5 years I'll get out. You're going to be in jail. You don't know how long you're going to be in jail. It's far more difficult to bear, isn't it? Uncertainty was one thing. Any other things? Yes, he's alone. Alone in the sense that at least Lord Ram had his brother Lakshman, he had his wife Sita. He could not have Ruma with him. He just had to flee for his life. He was alone. Anything else? Yes. So he knew, you could say he was misunderstood. His own brother had misunderstood him. And then the citizens didn't know what to think. The citizens just felt that maybe he conspired against the king. So Lord Ram, see, it's one thing to, if something terrible happens to us, and if people know we have been wronged, there's a difference between being wrong and being wronged. It's a world of difference. So for Lord Ram, it was that people thought he was wrong, whereas Lord Ram was wronged. Wrong was done to him, not wrong was done by him. It's an important point. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, his wife was stolen from him. So for Lord Ram, that happened only at the end of his exile. But for Sugriv, it was throughout he was all alone. Thank you. Yes. Yes, he was constantly threatened. It was not that Bharat or Kaikai or anyone was sending people out to kill Lord Ram in the forest. But Sugriv had to constantly struggle for his life. Yes? Yes, actually, it is true. You could say, but it's a good point over here. So he you could say he was misunderstood by citizens and he was hated by his brother. His own brother had done that to him. So Lord Ram was not hated by anyone. It's generally most of us, we don't like it if someone dislikes us. Unless, of course, we want that person to dislike us. Some people get some joy in that. But generally, we would like to be liked. And if somebody dislikes us, we try to, if I can clarify, if I can reconcile things, I would like to reconcile things. But hating, somebody's hating us out to kill us. So the fact that his own brother, whom he had served lifelong, that brother was hating him. So it's one thing to a related threat, and hate is related, but threat can come from many sources. But the fact that his own brother, whom he had served for so long, hated him so much, that was particularly painful. Anything else? Okay, was Sugriv really looking for revenge? That's an interesting question. The Sugriv does lament after Vali is killed, and there is a deathbed reconciliation. In fact, after Vali dies, Sugriv also feels that he laments, "What did I do? I killed my own brother. I can't be the king. I can't become the king." He says that on the funeral pyre, I will enter and give up my life. How can a person who's the killer of his own brother actually be a king? And then at that time, Ram and Lakshman both reminding of his words. Certainly, the negative feelings were there on his side. Why is my brother doing like this? But did he actually want his brother to die? Well, basically, there was no solution that he could see apart from that. So it was more of, you could say, justice rather than revenge. Yeah, because in his own survival required his brother's death. It was a situation like that. So he didn't really want to kill his brother. The Pandavas, when they fought, they may have taken vows to take revenge when Draupadi was being dishonored and other times. That was more an expression of anger at that time. But afterwards, the Pandavas were ready to settle. They were ready to make a peace proposal in the most accommodating of terms. And it was not just for optics. They were really earnest about it. Even Bhima had calmed down when Krishna was going. As peace messenger, Bhima said to Krishna that, "No, Krishna, Keshava, please try to settle peacefully." And so it was, when they fought, it was more for justice rather than revenge. Okay. So anyway, so these are many good reasons I had. Mm, so if we consider the point of view is that he had lived under great threat and great agony for a long time, and then suddenly he got his kingdom back, and then he was living in poverty, in austerity, in threat, and now he was the king. And as the king, kings have many responsibilities, but Vali had been a powerful king, so the kingdom was quite secure. And although Vali was dead, now the rainy season meant there was no threat in the kingdom, and he had nothing to do. He had nothing to do, and he had all royal enjoyment available for it. So he just lost himself in that. And he, for several months, he just reveled in sensual pleasures. So it's like, suppose, you know, we are all alone. Sometimes people have these nightmare fantasies. You're all alone in the island, and there's nothing to eat. And then you have to live on your own skills. You have to break down trees and make a cottage, and you have to find fruits and survive. But take the opposite fantasy. If you are all alone in a palace with lots of food to eat, lot of internet to serve, lots of things to enjoy, and nothing, no obligation, then it's very easy to succumb to that temptation. So that's what happened to Sugriva. So although Lakshman was angry with him, but it was conditional in the sense that in those circumstances, anyone could have done the same thing. So generally, when we think about a person's actions, Those actions we think either they did it because they're a bad person, it's or they did it because they were unaware. But in general, what happens is there is this third factor, the circumstances. And sometimes, in some circumstances, a person may just succumb. And in those times, it is important to recognize that such circumstances, if they come in someone's life, they need to protect themselves. A key to trusting ourselves is to know when to not trust ourselves. If we are to be trustworthy, then we need to ourselves be able to evaluate when I can't be trusted. If an alcoholic is going to recover from alcoholism, then they need to know. If they start thinking, okay, all these are my old friends, I've drunk many times before, but I can go with them, nothing is going to happen. Well, thinking that nothing is going to happen is going to be the cause where a lot is going to happen. We all have our weaknesses, and recognizing those weaknesses is the key to being able to trust us. That. So generally we think simply being trustworthy means we make our give a word and keep the word. Well, that is true, but when we will not be able to keep our words, we have to be able to assess that. If we are in circumstances where it's unlikely for us to be able to keep our word, then acknowledge that. So to be trustworthy, it is important not just to honor our word, it's important. But it's also important to put it this way. It's 1 and 2. Before we can honor our word, it is to assess our capacity. What can we do, what we can't do. And if we don't understand that, then we may make a commitment, but we may not stick to that commitment. And it's not because we are a bad person, it's just that is not our capacity. In the case of Sugriv, there is another later incident. Ravan was devious in his own way. And when Lord Ram's army, basically it was Sugriv's army, who was assisting Ram, they had come near Lanka. At that time, Ravan sent a messenger. And he said to Sugriv, I and Vali had a very good agreement with each other. We had a good understanding. Actually, it was not an agreement, it was a submission. Ravan had been very arrogant and he had tried to attack Vali. And according to the later retelling of Ram, and Vali was performing his Gayatri. And Ravan came and attacked him. And while performing his Gayatri, Vali just raised his arm and caught Ravan in his neck. And then Ravan couldn't do anything. Ravan was completely mortified. Now, at that time, Ravan, he just says, accept that you're stronger than me. That's the only place where he accepted it. But eventually they had made an agreement. And he says, I won't mess you with you, you don't mess with me. So he said, we had a good agreement. I have never antagonized you in any way. And my agreement was with the Vanara dynasty. So he said, if you stick to that agreement, then I will give you a lot of gifts. He tried to tempt Sugriv at that time. But Sugriv didn't even entertain that proposal. Sugriv was immediately able to reject it. He said that by abducting Sita, you have connected a heinous activity. I would not have reconciled with you anyway. But now that I have given my word to Ram, there's absolutely no question. There's a complete rejection without even needing a pause to consider. So what was the key difference? There, in his own kingdom, Sugriv forgot. He completely forgot. But here, he was immediately able to reject. So there he gave in to temptation, but here he just rejected temptation immediately. And the key difference was that he was more purposeful over here. He was not only having a clear purpose, but he was engaged in that purpose. So when we say purposeful, it is not just clarity, but also activity. Clarity means what do I want to do? And I am doing that. So in the case when the rainy season was going on, what happened was there was no activity that he could do at that time. And in general, our determination, we may have a particular purpose in our mind, we want to pursue it. But if there is no tangible activity done in that direction, then we may end up starting doing other things. If we don't stand for something, then we will fall for anything. So in that situation, he just succumbed to temptation because there was nothing that he was doing. So for us, temptations may keep coming in. Now, we can't ever live in a world which will be temptation free. We can minimize the temptation that we face, but temptations don't have to lead to distraction or deviation. And even when we have conditionings, so I'll conclude with this point and we can have a few questions. If we consider a person, there are external temptations. Now, in some ways we can minimize them, but we can't stop those temptations from coming. And then there are internal conditionings. Now, we all have conditionings and we can't eliminate those conditionings immediately. They will get purified by the practice of bhakti, but it will take time. So what can we do about this? Actually, while temptations are there externally, while conditionings are there internally, how can we avoid getting distracted? And the way to avoid that is internally we have purpose. We are clear, what am I doing? And what do I want to do? And then that purpose is translated externally into action. When that is clear, this is what I want to do, and these are the steps I'm taking in that direction. There will be small steps. Sometimes you can take big steps, sometimes you can take small steps. But if you're doing that, then the likelihood of succumbing to temptation is much lesser. And even if you succumb to temptation, rising up quickly and moving forward, moving up and moving up, getting up and moving on again will be much easier for us. So when there is condition, when there's something is entirely accidental, then okay, we just learn from it, we are careful, we don't repeat it. Something is more conditional, it arises from our conditionings, then we may have to protect ourselves. So there's one protection is by having some kind of boundaries whenever required. That was one of the sessions that we discussed. We keep temptations away. I mentioned that we need to know when to not trust ourselves. But the much more important thing, much more positive thing is to focus on having a purpose and taking steps forward in the purpose. So the idea is that if we consider this to be our consciousness, and then there is some conditioning, some temptation that arises from the conditioning that is there inside it. Now we can't drive this conditioning out. It is there. But if we try to drive the conditioning out, it's going to be very difficult. Because there is a thought inside us and you can't stop thinking about a thought. It's like you tell somebody, stop thinking about a yellow rabbit. Now what happens is as soon as you use the word yellow rabbit, you think about it. So like that, our conditioning, I will not think about it. Then saying I will not think about it, we are thinking about it. But what we can do is, we can bring a purpose into our consciousness. This is important for me. This is what I want to do. And then over a period of time, as we move forward, what will happen is, as that purpose fills our consciousness, then that conditioning gets driven out. It gets more precisely crowded out. So we can't drive out conditionings from within us, but we can crowd it out. This is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha. He says that when we fill our consciousness with Krishna, fill our consciousness with service to Krishna, then our conditionings get crowded out of it. It's that is the way Sugriva was able to completely not even consider the temptation. He was just completely filled with the purpose. I'm here to assist Lord. So if we focus more and more on strengthening the higher purpose in our life, when we come in the association of devotees, it is not just to hear some Krishna Katha, it is actually to reinforce a sense of our higher purpose in life. Whatever we are doing in our life, we have our jobs, we have families, they're all to be done in the mood of service to Krishna. And then we have some direct response, we have some direct services we can do for Krishna. And as that purpose becomes stronger, the pull of conditionings will become weaker and weaker by that. So I'll summarize. I discussed 4 main points today. First was we discussed about wrong actions. They can be mistakes or misdeeds. And then we categorize them further. That there can be something which is accidental, something which is intentional, and something in between is conditional. So when somebody commits a mistake, because we are social creatures, we need to know how to respond. And for that, we need to be able to evaluate. Then I talked about the gravity of ingratitude. And it leads to now ingratitude can be at various levels. That person doesn't reciprocate. That person doesn't even acknowledge. And worst is that person betrays. We do something good and they don't do anything good in return. We do something good, they don't even acknowledge that we did something good. We did something good and they stab us in the back. And why is it considered such a bad thing? It says ingratitude is the worst of sins, because what it may make us, it is one thing to doubt that particular person, it is another thing to doubt everyone, and then last is to doubt our own capacity to evaluate. And that can be the most damaging. We talked about how trust and doubt are like the accelerator and the brake in the drive of life. We need both, and we need both of them in a healthy balance. So if somebody is betrayed, it's very easy to lose that balance, and then a person can't function properly. And the third point I discussed was that when we are functioning in life, so it is if we are to learn to trust, become trustworthy, whether it is trustworthy in terms of knowing whom to trust, evaluating, or in making our own commitment, trusting ourselves. So for that, we need to know our limitations, know when we can't trust ourselves. So avoid tempting situations, especially those which are associated with our conditionings. You have to be careful. If an alcoholic wants to recover, then they can't just hang out with alcoholics in a bar. So then the last part I discussed was that what most helps us is a sense of purpose. Lord Ram didn't constantly blame and berate Sugriv. In those circumstances, he succumbed to that condition. He said that was a bad circumstance for him to be in. But when he had a clear purpose, then he didn't even consider temptation. And for all of us, by associating with devotees, by understanding the wisdom of Bhakti and Bhagavad Gita, we can infuse our life with a higher purpose. And that's how we can go beyond the pulls and pushes of temptation. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes.
To also chant the holy name purely. And that's what Prabhupada gave us, a movement where we would become purified and help others become purified. So can the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, can that replace purpose? That is the purpose, to chant the holy name.
Is chanting the holy names the purpose? yes, of course, it's the Yoga Dharma. Along with that, my understanding is that each one of us has a particular swabhav in the world. See, in the Bhagavad Gita, there are only two verses which Krishna repeats. One is Manmana Bhav Mad Bhakto, which is about devoting ourselves to him. So we could say that these two repeated verses, one is about our spiritual nature. That is, we have 934, 1865. Krishna says, absorb yourself in me, become devoted to me. So that we can say is that associated with our spiritual nature, which is associated with chanting the holy names. But Krishna also talks very strongly in terms of our material nature, that we all have a swabhava and we need to act according to our swabhava. I believe this is 334 and 1840, 45? Okay, 45, 40, 46, one of those verses, 46, 47, one of those verses. Shreyan swadharma viguna paradharmat swanushtita. So Krishna says we all have to act according to our nature. And so we could say our purpose in this world is twofold. One is we ultimately want to realize our spiritual nature and become absorbed in loving Krishna. But while we are doing that, we also have a body and a mind with a particular nature. And we need to align ourselves with that. And then different people will contribute differently. So a person with a more intellectual nature, they'll contribute to study through education. A person with a more administrative nature, they'll contribute in a different way. So sometimes if if our material nature is neglected too much, then that leads to dissatisfaction, and that dissatisfaction can interfere with our spiritual connection with Krishna also. So yes, we could say that ultimately our purpose in life is to relate with Krishna through all aspects of our being. It is we relate with Krishna through our heart and soul, offering it in love to Krishna, and it is also we relate with Krishna by doing by acting according to our nature in the world. So Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha, Krishna says. So bhakti has two aspects to it. Is one is immersive bhakti. We immerse ourselves Krishna, turn away from the world, just focus wholeheartedly on Krishna. But another aspect of bhakti is what we call as inclusive bhakti. That where we turn toward the world, we understand that the world is also the domain of service to Krishna. And yes, we would like to inspire everyone to chant the holy names, to devote themselves to loving Krishna. But for many people, if we just speak them, chanting purely is the purpose of life, it seems just strange, if not irrelevant to most people. Making that statement without substantial philosophical understanding. See, there are wars going on, there are people who are starving, there are calamities in the world, and you think chanting is the purpose of life. Am I not meant to do something practical? So that is definitely, so unless we can explain carefully, what does chanting mean? Chanting doesn't just mean that we turn away from the world and we absorb ourselves in Krishna. Chanting means our heart becomes bound in love to Krishna. And when our heart is bound in love towards Krishna, then that heart is also inspired to help others in a holistic way. So yes, ultimately, that absorption in Krishna, both internally and externally, that is the ultimate purpose of life.
Srila Prabhupada put it in a very simple way. Do what you're doing, but add Krishna.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you, Guruji. You want to add some comments, Prabhu? Yes, if somebody cannot,
If someone says it's impossible, that I mean, or almost obviously nothing's absolutely impossible, but let's say somebody says that because of their family situation or their work situation or something in their life, that externally they know there are certain situations in which they cannot trust themselves. They know that. However, I mean, like you were talking about drinking. So in some
yeah,
cultures, like I've heard in South Korea and Ireland, if you don't go out with your workmates to a pub, you're going to lose your job. So certain people, you may not have to drink there,
Yeah.
they're not going to obligate you to drink alcohol, but if you don't go there,
Yeah. That's
so
true.
there are certainly situations in which removing all the external temptations in which you can't trust yourself is not absolutely possible.
Yeah, that's
So
true. Right, that's
I,
true.
and I wondered about that, and if I can ask something else as well. Is that all right? You
Yes.
asked me, so
Okay.
otherwise
Okay.
I would have just sat
No,
here
I wanted to.
with my mouth zipped. So
No,
you
no. I
sure
was
you
thinking.
want to ask me?
No. I wanted to ask you
You
to
can
comment.
take it back if you like,
No.
because I have another question, but I'm not sure. That's up to
Okay.
you. You
No,
know
no.
me.
Because now what I was talking about this Swabhava, and I was thinking about your book Career Dharma. That's why I wanted
Yeah,
whether you had
it
anything
was
comment on
nice.
that.
It was nice.
Okay.
So
So
I do have one more.
okay,
If-
let me address
You
this.
want to do that one first?
Yes,
And then
please.
we don't know if we'll
Yeah.
try the other one or not. Okay.
Let me finish this one as much as I can, and you can feel free to add or correct also. So, what about situations in which there are that we just cannot create a temptation-free zone. We just have to function. Like the example, I would say a much more common example is that now we have to we live in a world where we all have to use internet, and internet gives us access to so many things which can distract us, which can contaminate us. I say I don't want to get distracted, but very few of us have the luxury to just cut ourselves from the internet permanently. Sometimes we can do that. So what do? It's difficult. It's difficult. So I've thought of this quite a bit, and I would say I struggle with these things also myself. So now one of the things is we can create boundaries for ourselves. That means that, like, if somebody, going back to the example, if I'm going in a particular situation where there are going to be temptations, then if we have some boundaries, so there's a different, I will not go into that situation at all. That's not possible. But when I go into that situation, if I have someone with me who can just remind me, okay, if I start drinking, I drink too much. Or generally, if we tell about our principles to others, and if we communicate in a respectful way to others, then sometimes telling us that I don't drink because of this, in today's world especially, then what happens? People respect us. Okay, that's the way you live. I won't force you. If we make them feel guilty for what they are doing, then it becomes a problem. Just respectfully communicate, then that helps. And sometimes communicating our principles itself becomes our protection. I've told them I won't be drinking, and then if I drink, something is wrong. Okay, so that itself can become a protection at one level. So sometimes some devotees think that let me conceal my spirituality. About it will embarrass me, but actually sometimes concealing our spirituality may endanger our spirituality more than just not in a instructive way, but in just a respectful, polite way communicating it. But beyond that, how boundaries can be established? If we are using the internet, maybe plan a schedule in such a way that we're not constantly on the internet. We have some kind of boundaries. Maybe have someone else whom we can share with what I'm doing if we have some issues. So there are various ways in which boundaries can be planned. I think that's what is protection for us. And another is that if we have some regular schedules, the lesser the structure in our life, the greater is the rupture the mind can cause in our life. If I have a whole weekend with nothing to do, then I start watching TV and I spend 48 hours watching TV. But if I have plans, okay, I'm going to do this, then what happens is that also helps. So that yukta ahara viharasya, that regulation, that which Krishna talks about, one way to bring the regulation is by having external supports to bring that regulation. So those are a few thoughts. And of course, if you have association, even if not necessarily when we are facing the temptation, but if we have someone with whom can share, I'm having these challenges. The word often is like accountability partners or friends. Then okay, I'm struggling with this issue, and if we tell them, that person is non-judgmental, not condemning, but helping us, and that can also help a bit. You have some more points?
Actually answered. You give half of talking about the accountability and schedule. Could I propose something else as
Yes,
well?
please. Yeah.
Because someone wrote to me a week ago and said that he was having difficulty doing things without distraction, and he considered that the reason was that his purpose was not strong. And I said, well, the problem with that is that you just beat yourself up and say, well, I guess I don't have enough purpose. Well, I guess I don't have enough desire. I have to increase my desire. And then I discovered that what he was trying to do was something he didn't enjoy, something that he felt obliged to do to get a result that he wanted. He had to study for a course, for a certificate, and he wanted the certificate, but he found the course boring. So I suggested the accountability partners. And then I also said, maybe you can find a different course where you'll actually enjoy doing the course. So I've just seen that sometimes it's not necessarily that I don't have a strong enough desire, or I do have a strong enough desire. I do have a strong enough purpose, but the activity itself is difficult in some way. It involves some sort of negative emotion, or maybe I don't know what to do. Maybe I don't know what the first thing to do is, or maybe I don't know how to do it. I have some kind of confusion. And if I put it all on my purpose and all on my desire, then I may actually get more depressed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very true.
So sometimes it's a question of, can there be a fun way to do this? I mean, I could just give you a simple example. I had some service I needed to do that was very tedious and boring and difficult, but it needed to be done. And then my granddaughter said, "Why don't you listen to something you like?" So I put on the Mahabharat audiobook in my earphones, and then I was able to do work for hours and hours without any fatigue and without any difficulty and without any distraction. So that may also be, is that all right?
Yeah, that's, thank you.
Okay.
It's like, if you're doing something which we don't like, then it is very difficult to sustain ourselves for a very long time. So either we have to do something which we like, or we have to bring something that we like into the activity that we dislike in some way. So without that positive emotion, it's difficult to sustain. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yes, we have. Where are the questions? Where is the mic? Okay. Welcome.
Thank you for the interesting points. I was reflecting on the sense of accountability, and I was laughing because I remember when I was beginning in my devotional service, and I had a lot of responsibility. I was like the head pujari, and I used to run the temple, and people from very pious backgrounds would be coming up to me and offering respect, and I was thinking, they have no idea where I come from, And but I remember I used to joke when devotees went through difficult times. It wasn't a joke, but I would tell them. I said, well, the mantra I always told myself is that I would like to be in Maya, but I can't afford to be. I would like to be in Maya, but I have this responsibility, because for me, my purpose was to make sure that the deities were worshipped nicely and that the devotees in the temple were trained nicely. So I might like to be, running on the beach and drinking papaya juice. My type of Maya is a different mode of Maya. But I might like to be doing all those things. But I feel a sense of accountability. And so that's also where role models come in. Because why would I be that way, But because I saw others that were role models. I mean, of course, the greatest model is, Srila Prabhupada, how he understood the manobistam of his spiritual master. And he was able to be in so many circumstances. Like we could just think, oh my God, if somebody comes in my house and they have cat food or, but Srila Prabhupada, he was able to be in these most awkward circumstances because, like you said, he had a mission, and the mission was from his spiritual master. So we might not have, some devotees might not have spiritual masters yet, but if there's role models, and I see in our community, I've seen the difference it's made since we have the Bhakti Vriksha groups. Like it used to be that we had we had devotees that lived in the temple and in ISKCON, and then you had devotees of a congregation that would come on the weekend, or you had devotees that would come for Janmashtami. But then I saw through the Bhakti Vrikshas, when people had role models, they become very serious about learning Shastra, about taking initiation. And then there's that sense of accountability, not accountability coming from guilt, but accountability coming from loving, loving exchanges. Because accountability from guilt, it doesn't work. So when there's those loving exchanges, so for myself, that gave me a lot of strength that and even now, like I feel a sense of responsibility to the congregation, that I need to set a certain example. So I was just thinking that is a really helpful way, to stay on track. And some of us have very heavy conditioning. Those of us that are in the West, we have heavy conditioning. But also, like Drishta Prabhu was saying, the holy name. So we know that ultimately, if we're not absorbing in the holy name, we're not going to have strength. And, and the importance of going to the holy Dham and getting the dust of the Dham. So I just wanted to share those points. But thank you so much for your wonderful classes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, just one quick point to add to this. Generally, when we want to improve ourselves, sometimes if we have a purpose bigger than ourselves, that inspires us to improve much more than just, I have to improve myself because I want to become a better person. But if we have something bigger than ourselves that that depends on us, that we need to contribute to, then there's something within the human psyche which actually, where when we take responsibility of something bigger than ourselves, that brings out our higher side. It's curious. Many people, even they have serious diseases, they forget to take medicines. But if they have a pet and the pet is sick, they will remember to give medicines to the pet. And in order to take care of the pet, they will take care of themselves and they'll give the medicine to themselves. So we all need something bigger than ourselves that we have tangibly as accountable to. Thank you. We have time? Or?
One last.
Yes, please. So you had a question. Okay, we'll take this and then.
Hare Krishna. My question was, how do we repair our trust within ourselves if we find that anytime a situation arises, we find that we can't trust ourselves? How do we repair our relationship with ourselves?
Yeah, so if we have been betrayed or if we have lost our capacity to trust ourselves, how do we repair it? Well, generally it is by slow, steady steps. We look back at our life and we have trusted people in the past, and not all the time it turned out badly. There are times when one time it may have turned out so badly that we get terribly scarred. But there are times when it has worked out well for us. So we can't change our past, but we can change, or we can choose our memories of the past. Events in the past, they have already happened. But which events I replay in my mind, that is something which I can choose. Now, because of our wounds, the mind may auto-replay certain moments, but we can choose to replay some other events. Okay, this is the, and then by that we can slowly, my judgment might have been off sometimes, but it was good also sometimes. And then we can learn from our experience. Okay, this is what I did this time wrong. This is what I can do. And as we take slow steps, we can move forward and we learn to rebuild our trust. It may take time, but it's possible. Okay. Thank you. Do we have time for? Okay. Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Having been in that environment where one is immersed in work, for example, for many years, and trying to maintain one's strength spiritually, one can also think of ways of benefiting the persons who are in that environment. And by praying to the Supreme Lord, He will give us inspiration. And there are endless ways in which one can actually give Krishna at some level to the people who are in that environment. And one way of doing it is to be a role model, a person who is completely responsible, who is punctual, who is true to his or her word, that people can actually say, where's this person getting all these value systems from? It's just a little comment. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you. Prabhupada said that what is follows, they are perfect gentlemen and ladies. The idea is that wherever we function, if we become role models, not just in terms of our definition of what is a role model, also in terms of what they can understand. We are polite, we are courteous, we are helpful, and that helps us also. Thank you very much. Shri Ramachandra Bhagwan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai. Gaur Premanande. Yeah. Hare Krishna. So I have written about 27 books. Some of them are here. Much of what I spoke today is based on this book, Wisdom from Ramayana. There are 20 incidents from the Ramayana that are analyzed and practical life lessons about how to avoid misunderstanding leading to break down the relationships, as happened with Vali and Sugriv, or how to avoid getting manipulated, as happened with Kaikai and Mantara. So there are practical life lessons from the Ramayana. This is Wisdom from Ramayana on life and relationships, and this is a calendar with 365 quotes inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. I said we can't change our past, but we can choose our memories. So there are there are practical quotes like that. This is so these are all based on one verse from the Bhagavad Gita. So those who open their mouths without opening their minds end up eating their words. This is inspired by 1715 in the Bhagavad Gita. So there are quotes like this. So this is also available if you all, and these and several other books are also available. If you want, you can have them. I'm available for signing the books also. If you take a multiple set of books, it's also available at a substantial discount. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Haribo. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for another wonderful session. It's so nice, like, we all have, everyone here has read like Ramayana, we know the storyline of Ramayana, but just to analyze like today's pastime, how Sugriv at one instant fell into temptation, and other instant, how he just didn't even like, it didn't even disturb him, he was so strong. And what is the meaning for that to each one of us? So powerful. So next time we read this pastime, we can actually think of what wonderful instruction this pastime actually brings. And similarly, like the previous classes also, Prabhupada, one on the Lakshman Rekha and importance of boundaries for our life. So now when we read these pastimes of Ramayana, it is actually so deep. And the way, the depth that Prabhu has actually gone to actually analyze this pastime, to actually see the different aspects of this pastime is just amazing. It's just so brilliant. So we are so, so grateful, Prabhuji. It's like really wonderful. You have just changed the way in which we can actually read the stories of Ramayana with a very deep perspective and actually make it practical for each one of us. So we are very grateful for your association. We are really very happy that every year you come here, and we always feel so much bonding and connection with you. And we're very grateful to have you. So let's give a big Haribol to His Grace Chaitanya Charana. Haribol! 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 His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai. Jai. And on behalf of our entire New Goloka community, Prabhuji, we invite you next time when you're doing your US tour, please, New Goloka should be the number one on your list. We are like really eagerly very happy to have you. So please do come back to New Goloka. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. So as Prabhu mentioned, the books are right here. And, immediately after this announcement, you can actually come. And if you personally also have some questions, you can talk to Prabhu and you can get his books. He'll sign it for you. And so thank you so much. And all these classes, like I think Prabhu gave 6 classes Prabhu has given here. So all these 6 classes will be available on our New Goloka Media YouTube. So if you have not subscribed to it, please go to New Goloka Media. There'll be a separate playlist with all the classes. And actually, Ramchandra and the youth, they are managing this entire. So we want to give a big haribol to our youth. Okay. So we'll be posting the link, and then you can actually catch up with any classes you may have missed. Okay? So thank you all so much for joining us today. Our next program is dinner prasadam downstairs. So we all can proceed downstairs. 7 o'clock is the next aarti. So after dinner prasadam, you're welcome. Yes, one more. Yes. After dinner prasadam, you're welcome to come back and participate in the aarti, and then darshan will close at 7:30.
So before we just head out for dinner prasadam, just a couple of quick things. One is that Prabhuji mentioned that we have Ramachandra. He is managing our New Goloka media. We also have these classes available on Instagram, New Goloka Instagram account. If you don't follow us, please go ahead and do that. All the classes are there as well. And if you could just take a second. So we are celebrating the following birthdays this week, the birthdays of devotees this week. And Gauri Mishra, Ashrita Anand, Sachit Kumar Sarva Vempati, Shri Balaji Prabhu, and Ramachandra Chawla. Ramachandra is here. Are any of the others here? Can we all please join all together and chant Hare Krishna for all of these devotees who are celebrating the birthday this week? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If you would like to sign up for birthday wishes, birthday blessings, please go ahead, scan the QR code at the bottom right of this sheet. There will be a form that will come up, and you fill it out, you'll be in the system. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. And for those who are having children 12 years or younger who will be playing outside of the Prasadam hall, please do make sure that they are supervised. We take safety of our children very, very. We want to make sure that our children are supervised. So at least one parent, at least one adult, please be out there to supervise the playing children. Thank you.
Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Brahmane Vaishnave Swalpa Punyavritam Rajan Vishwasone Vajayate Sharirar Vidyaja Jadendriya Trahika जीवे फले विषय सागरे तार मध्य जीवायति लोभमय सुदुर्मति ताके जेठा कठिन संसारे O Krishna bada dayamar Kari bare jihva jay Swaprasada nadila bhai Sayanamrita pa Radha Krishna gunaga Preme Dako Shri Chaitanya Nitai O Jai Nimai Jai Nitai Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhagavad Mahaprasad ki jai Shri Shri Radha Golokananda ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.